Hi, I'm Claire Staunton from Circulator. I'm here in iconic offices on Merrion Square, and I'm here to interview Mark from Pointy on behalf of ECAI. Hi Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi Claire, so I'm one of the founders of Pointy, and Pointy is a tool that helps local retailers get their businesses online. So if you think about like typical local retailer, pharmacy, bike store, convenience store, anyone that you might find on a local high street, those stores typically don't have much of an online presence, and it's a bit of a barrier for them to get online. So we make it very easy. We have a tool for them that they connect to their barcode scanner in the store. So it just clips onto the barcode scanner. Whenever they scan anything in the store, any product they scan, we put on a website that we automatically create and host and maintain for them. So basically, plug in the device, 5 minutes later, they've got a website listing everything they sell in the store, and we keep that automatically up to date for them. So a really, really easy way for local retailers to start getting up an online presence.
I suppose, what would you think is the most important thing for a digital presence for stores like this at the moment?
So I think a lot of retailers don't even really know where to start. Like they look around and they see, everyone's on their phones all the time. People are definitely living a more digital life. And a lot of local businesses, traditional retailers, their online presence is still relatively undeveloped. So they're not quite sure where to start. And I think the ones who've gone further down aren't quite sure if they're getting the return on investment that they need to get, like the ones who've invested heavily. So I think just sort of knowing where to invest their time and where to start is probably where a lot of retailers are in the journey at the moment.
And how would you direct a company to start that online to offline marketing, if you like what you've just described there?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to understand what does consumer behavior look like and what does the market look like. So, a lot of people are surprised when I tell them that 90% of commerce takes place in brick and mortar stores and 10% takes place online. So if you listen to the media, you might think it's sort of all online and Amazon is eating the world, but Amazon is 5% of retail sales. So it's actually a relatively small part of the market. So I think first focus, 90% is taking place offline, but people are on their phones all the time, they're doing a lot of research. So a lot of the purchases that people are making in the brick and mortar channel are sort of starting online. So everyone's seen the customer who walks into the store, walks over to the shelf, they know exactly what they want, they go to the till and leave. They made their buying decision long before they got to the store. So I think sort of having that touch points with the consumer before they come in is something that's very important to a traditional retailer. So in many ways, doing the sale online doesn't mean selling online. It doesn't mean e-commerce. It means sort of online influenced offline sales. So that's what people call online to offline.
Yeah. In our industry, I suppose, where I'm working, we see a lot of strategy that drives footfall and increases traffic in store. And I suppose it would just be good to get a take on smaller SMEs and how much time and effort they put into their strategy to actually communicate and build up presence online to actually increase footfall. How are you seeing SMEs performing that way?
So I think it kind of splits into two. I think there's a lot of retailers who just find it overwhelming and don't do anything. So that would be your typical local store who they might have a Facebook page, but they might not be doing more than that. They don't really know how to take the next step. And I think the kind of tools that we provide are kind of things that fit very well for that segment because it's very simple. And then you also get people who've invested very heavily. They're the kind of the early adopters. They might have rolled out a full e-commerce site. They might have invested very significantly in it, but they might only be a local business. And I think the issue there is that online is a very different kind of channel. It's very complicated, And so I said 10% is online. Half of that is Amazon. Another quarter of it is the top 20 players. So you're talking about maybe 1 or 2% of the market that's left for everyone else. And so I think you have to commit very deeply to that if you want to get return on investment purely from online sales. So I think a lot of people are sort of missing the fact that if you just look at the pure return on investment of e-commerce, it often doesn't make sense. But if you look more widely and say, well, is my website driving people into the store, and you measure across the channels, all of a sudden it can actually start to make sense. So I think that's what, you have to be quite sophisticated in how you measure it to actually sort of see the return.
You mentioned Amazon a couple of times, and it seems everybody is chatting about Amazon at the moment. What do you see happening there?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So a lot of these traditional offline retailers are moving online and building up their web presence. Amazon is actually starting to move a little bit in the other direction. So they've recently purchased Whole Foods, and people might have seen Amazon Go, which is their sort of digitized convenience store offering. If you look in China, places like Alibaba now runs something like 1 million stores across China, where they have essentially a franchise type model, a bit similar to Spar or something, but it's being sort of directed by essentially a machine learning engine that and a toolkit that Alibaba is providing. So I think the sort of commerce is blending together. Like, if you're a shopper, you don't think about e-commerce versus, you just want to get something. And so I think, all these businesses, the division is fading away, and it's really, the buzzword is omni-channel, right? Consumer wants to buy something, and I think the offline businesses are moving online, the online businesses are moving offline, because for different types of things, people want to buy in different types of ways. So I think you just meet the customer where they are, and that's not just in one place.
I recently read a report on Forrester that a lot of people are actually doing their research online whilst in store, in the aisle, whilst they're actually at the product.
Absolutely.
And I suppose just to get your take on that, what you're seeing happening in the space you're in at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've all done it. I've done it all the time. People price compare in the shop, or they read reviews. I personally would struggle to buy something without having done a little bit of background on it. And so that's this online influenced part of the market. So if I said that the whole pie is maybe 90% offline, maybe a third of that, maybe 30% of all sales have some kind of online influence component. And so I think if your store isn't visible in that channel, basically you're losing out massively. So I think any store, no matter what they are, even if they're a local newsagent, they just need to have some online presence in order to be at least in the sort of consideration set of the consumer. Where if I want to find a good example would be craft beer, right? A lot of stores sell craft beer. Not every store sells every particular brand. So if I want to find a particular craft beer and I don't know where it is, my first instinct, I'm going to pull up Google and say, where can I find Brewdog in Dublin? And the stores that pop up on that search result are the ones that are probably going to get my business. Now, there might be a store, 10 meters or 50 meters down the road that has the product. If I'm not seeing it, they're losing out on that sale. And it's just getting in front of the consumer, being in that channel. That's the thing that I think is really becoming table stakes for everyone.
And for, say, SMEs and the smaller stores that have not gone online yet, what would be your number one advice around their strategy to getting to the point where people are aware of them, they know what products they have? What's the biggest advice you could give them?
So I think there's a very simple checklist, and I think just look at where you are already in the journey and start at the bottom. So the first thing is have you got a basic listing on, say, Google Maps? Do you have your name and address and opening hours visible? Because that's the most searched for thing. Is the shop open? It's first question. And I think a lot of retailers have now got that done, but not all of them. So I think, basically, first of all, just make sure you're on the map, you have your opening hours visible. And the next one is, I think the very next question people have is a particular product in the store? Where can I find what I'm looking for? Is it in stock right now? And that's where I think a lot of retailers haven't yet, sort of, even larger retailers, I don't think there's a way to find what my local Tesco has in or out of stock right now. So I think that's the very next step on the journey that a lot of them haven't done yet. And then, of course, above that, there's, that you can get far more sophisticated, particularly around measurement and how to do the right kind of online advertising and so on. But, I think just cover the basics first, right? Take the baby steps and walk before you can run.
Just, with your experience now, 4 years in the e-commerce industry, I mean, what does the future look like, or what do you see with new technology coming?
I think, people sometimes think, retail is going away. You get this Silicon Valley kind of idea that everything's going to be drone delivered. And I think, the future is a little bit less radical than that. People have been shopping locally for a very long time. E-commerce is very convenient in some cases, but it's not everything. People still probably want to go to a garden center and pick up a plant. It's not going to be on post delivering you your plants in the post. I think the world is going to be mixed for a long time, probably forever. And I think understanding that that the internet can help drive sales, but isn't necessarily the only sales channel. I think that's where the media hype about the retail apocalypse is just really off base. I think it's understanding that it's always going to be a mixture, and I think it has got more complicated because you now have to be good at more things. But it's e-commerce isn't like the death knell of traditional businesses. It's just another sort of feather in their bow, and they have to get good at it.
Mark, just to finish off the last question, can you share any success or good customer stories you've come across over the years?
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice when you see a traditional business, sort of set up a website for the first time and kind of get that magic moment where they have a new customer who's come in. So we've had, a pharmacy in Dublin, and somebody drove from Carlow to get a product that they had that they couldn't find anywhere else. We work with someone in the US, and somebody drove across the whole state to kind of get a craft beer that this store had that was hard to find. So like those kind of things where somebody like really tangibly feels, okay, this website brought me a new customer. That's a really nice moment for everyone involved, and it's kind of nice for us to feel that we've helped their business take a step up and keep getting new customers in by these new channels. So yeah.
Well, thanks very much for your time, Mark.
Thank you very much.